For myself, I think after listening to the governor's budget address this evening, certainly disappointed. To me, it's a 1,000-page press release, not a budget. A lot of the items that the governor ticked off, I think, were kind of the greatest hits of the Democrat Party, and certainly got some of the Democrats in the chamber riled up. But I think an opportunity was missed to really work with the Republican legislature to try and create a budget that I think would be real and would be family supportive. A lot of the items that he's gotten there, I think, are going to raise taxes significantly on families. And so I think there was an opportunity missed, and it's probably going to be nip and tuck along the way to try and develop something that really will serve Wisconsinites well, but it certainly didn't seem like Governor Evers delivered that type of budget address this evening. So I'll turn it over to Speaker Vos.
Thank you, Senator Fitzgerald. I went into tonight's budget address having read the newspaper comments and all the stories about the liberal wish list that was really the last 2 weeks' worth of announcements. Tonight, we heard some topics that I hope we will be able to find common ground on. But the idea and the way that he presented the budget tonight is just totally different than the reality of what we have been seeing over the course of the past 2 months since he assumed office. This budget is a liberal tax and spend wish list. And let me explain to you just a few items for the average family. So an average family in the state of Wisconsin under this budget, spending goes up by $1,000 for every man, woman, and child in this state. We know that property tax increases are going to have their largest increase in almost a decade. We know that not only is he trying to turn back the clock on all of the successful reforms that we have, but a couple examples where I know he talked about items that were popular with the public. Let me tell you things that are popular with the public that I know he's looking to change. He wants to change the ability to have your property taxes at a reasonable level. That is overwhelmingly supported by the public all across the state. One of the things that I am most frustrated by is with no consultation, no discussion, his budget would change the work requirements for those people who are on welfare to actually get a job, to go out and seek employment instead of just staying on the dole. So we see that his budget increases spending by almost $8 billion, and that's because there's going to be a whole lot more people who are part of the welfare system if Tony Evers would get his way. The lucky thing is, for the state of Wisconsin, we have great people in our finance committee. We're going to look at this budget in depth and hopefully find areas that we can compromise on. But as I look tonight, there are a lot fewer opportunities than I had hoped for. With that, I'll turn it over to Senator Darling.
Thank you very much. Well, wow, hold on to your hats. This is like back to the future, back to spending and taxes, and we are so much on the right track. And people, he gave poll numbers. People are saying in Wisconsin, we are on the right track. This budget puts us on the wrong track. Let's look at the spending, as was mentioned by Speaker Vos. Every man, woman, and child, a family of 4, is going to be charged up to $4,000 for that family, $1,000 a person increase in spending. That's unacceptable for Wisconsin's hardworking family. We talked about the highest increase in property taxes in 8 years. This is unacceptable. We set the target to reform the state, to get on the right track, to grow the economy, and we're on the right track, and this dismantles that track. And I think it's very, very serious. And I, too, was hoping to be able to work with this governor, but wow, this looks like a fundraising letter for his people who put him in office, and that's wrong. He said it was for the people of Wisconsin. No one in Wisconsin wants to pay $4,000 for a family of 4 in additional taxes. That is just unacceptable. So I hope that you will paint the picture that this really is not the budget for our people, that our people said we're on the right track. This budget takes us off that track, and I'm very, very, very disappointed. I was hoping we could work with the governor, but I am optimistic in this regard. We're going to go forward. We're going to start with the base budget that we're going to build that's going to put us on the right track. We're not going to go down this way. We're not going to let this happen. We said we're not raising taxes, and this raise is so out of sight. It's just outrageous, and I'm very, very disappointed. So now, Representative Nygren.
Governor Evers' rhetoric since he got elected, and even when he was campaigning, was he talked a lot about us working together. Campaigned pretty much as a moderate, campaigned as a problem solver, being able to work across the aisle. He even ended his speech talking about unity and trying to avoid division. Yet pretty much every single policy that he ticked off tonight and over the last 2 weeks are things that people that I represent, people in our caucus, will not stand for. So his rhetoric is simply just not accurate. It's simply dishonest to the people of Wisconsin, and hopefully that message gets out. Just on the nuts and bolts of the budget, this increases spending. We talked about every man, woman, and child, and those are huge numbers, but it's a $6 billion increase. It's nearly an 8% increase in spending over the last budget. So, I mean, those numbers are extravagant. So I do believe that, we're going to get to the right place in our discussions over the next several months. There are some things that I think we can find within the budget that we can work together. But the governor's message about unity and trying to avoid division is simply lost when you lead with as many divisive issues as he has over the last several weeks. So we will try to, as a Joint Finance Committee, find things where we can agree on. But we know there are many things in this document that was as presented tonight that are simply non-starters. We began the session by giving him some things we could work on. Unfortunately, very few of those things are actually a part of the conversation tonight.
Where are some things you believe we can compromise?
Well, we're still sifting through the document. We learned tonight he is proposing to repeal right to work. He is proposing to change the law regarding working on welfare, making sure that you can become self-sufficient. So unfortunately, we haven't had a chance to go through everything because it's all based on huge tax increases. So yes, would we prefer to get to 2/3 funding for our schools? Yes, that's an area that we sent in our letter earlier this year that we thought we could find that common ground on. Would we love to have an expansion of broadband service? Yes. But the problem is his numbers are so out of touch with our ability to pay unless we want to have these massive tax increases. It's difficult to say we can compromise on this area or that until we look at the totality of the budget.
Have you seen how he's going to pay for this?
Well, that's the problem. It's $6 billion of spending, as was mentioned, an 8% increase. I mean, our increases were what, 2.5 to 3? And that's why we got on the right track, because we limited our spending, we reformed how we do business in the state, we grew the economy, we grew jobs and better paying jobs. So this is really devastating to our people to get us off that track and go up to 8% increase in spending. I don't know about you, but I don't think many people have taken home an 8% increase in their salary. So where is this money going to come from? It's going to come out of the hide of our taxpayers.
So, there was something he mentioned about justice. There's a bill that Mark Bourne and others had worked on. That's something that our folks have been in agreement on. Yet even in that case, while he did fully address the public defenders, the concern for the private bar, he only partially addressed the need for assistant district attorneys in the state. So even in that regard, he is not fully, he's not working with the Republican Party leaders to be able to get to a reasonable, compromise. And the word compromise means that you actually require us to be at the table and have these conversations. And I'm pretty sure my colleagues have never had one conversation about the policies that the Governor Evers presented this evening.
Do you support in full or in part any of the tax increases in this budget proposal?
I think the leadership has said.
I'll just mention my caucus. Remember the Senate Republican caucus? I mean, even obviously with full control, very difficult to move some of these types of policies. So there's kind of complete disregard for the Republican-controlled legislature. Because sitting there, I'm just thinking in my mind a number of members that are clearly going to reject everything in this document just full out. So it's forced us to go back to the finance process, I think, which is what I've been saying really since November, when people say, oh, you're abandoning or you're not working with the governor. I mean, there was a complete disregard this evening for whether or not we could get the votes or momentum to actually get a budget done in this fashion. I mean, it's been completely thrown out the window at this point. It's not going to happen.
It's not a people's budget. It's that's not an honest portrayal of this budget. No one that I know would say, yeah, an 8% increase is just what we want. Yeah, $1,000 a person, man, woman, and child is just what we want. That's not what I'm hearing. This is not a people's budget.
Would you support repealing the minimum markup law for fuel?
I think that same type of thing. I think a little bit of shell game there. Governor is willing to raise taxes 8 cents, and then he tried to convince everybody in the state that suddenly repealing minimum markup was somehow going to put more money in their pocket. I just don't see it right now. I mean, I know there's members of my caucus that certainly embrace that individual piece of legislation, but the idea that he linked the two together, I think, is a little bit disingenuous. So.
Will you make your own budget?
I think we are. I don't think we have a choice. I mean, I think the Finance Committee is going to utilize a process we always utilize to make sure that we keep the state's finances in order and keep the state on track. Clearly, this budget tonight did not do that. So.
And the thing that we can't forget is that we have a record amount of new money that's coming in before anything is raised. Remember, we started this budget process with a huge revenue projection because our economy is so strong and a record surplus. So $1.8 billion of spending that we could do without raising a single tax or fee. That would be more money than we have ever had to spend as long as Republicans have been in charge. So it's not like there's some problem with not having enough revenue. The problem in Tony Evers' budget is that it just spends too much. It spends way more than Wisconsin can afford. So I think the question is going back and saying, we're going to sit as a caucus, hopefully with our Senate colleagues together, and really figure out what's the best way to spend that $1.8 billion, investing in our public schools, investing in things like broadband, perhaps some tax relief, which would be a high priority for many in our caucus, and certainly not a property tax increase at the highest level that we've seen in almost a decade. This is clearly not a budget that is based on the reality that most Wisconsinites see every single day, a growing economy, but at the same time, people wanted to keep more of the money that they earn in their pockets. This is a budget that's based on somebody who spent too much time in Madison. That's the problem. They have spent time in a liberal bubble, thinking that this is what the people of Wisconsin want. It isn't.
The governor said he's going to authorize up to $70 million in bonding for clean water. Is that in line with what your task force is going to recommend?
Well, first of all, there's not a need to have $70 million in bonding because last session we already created a program where every single municipality in the state can replace lead laterals partnering with local governments and those local property owners. So I understand why he wants to look like he's doing something, but the lucky thing is the Republican legislature already has. So if there are good ideas that don't just throw more money at a problem that we're already working on, of course we'll take a look at those. But there are so many things on this liberal wish list, it's hard to sort what's a real priority and what's nothing more than something aiming at people who attend a Democratic convention.
All right, thanks everyone. JFC time.
Thank you.